When looking for someone to blame in the wake of mass shootings or extreme violence, there is always one topic that rears its head, and that is gaming. But the latest study from researchers at Oxford University suggests that there's actually no link between video games and aggressive behaviour. So, are they in fact completely harmless after all? To discuss this, I'm joined now by parenting psychologist Dr. Amanda Gummer and gaming expert Alicia Judge. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Now, this is a really interesting report, but Alicia, as a gaming expert, I've heard from a lot of gamers on Twitter this morning who are saying it is no real surprise to those who actually play games.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the games industry has been saying this for years, and it's so empowering to finally have the science backing up these claims, because the whole reason that people started blaming video games for violence goes back to a man called Jack Thompson. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was a lawyer who started blaming video game violence for mass shootings in America. And he had no scientific claims to back it up, and he's actually now being disbarred for lying during tribunals. But it kind of just snowballed into this massive kind of mass conscious, oh, that must be the reason, because everyone wants to have a reason for these awful tragedies to happen, and it's easy to point the finger at video games.
Is this going to be a sigh of relief for parents, do you think, Amanda?
Well, I think it is, but I think it needs to be taken sort of in moderation. What they're saying is that when you're looking at teenagers, there is no obvious link between teenagers playing violent video games and aggression. What they're not saying is it's fine for you to fill your boots from any age, play as much video games as you like, doesn't have any impact. They're saying there is no link for teenagers between playing violent video games and aggression. So I would argue if your teenager is happy, healthy, communicative, is having a balanced play diet, is getting out there, doing sport, being active, and they like some violent video games, then it is reassuring, and you can let them go. If they are showing violent tendencies already, then maybe you do still want to be looking at where that's coming from, how they're exhibiting it, and making sure that it's not. I think we're falling into the cause and effect kind of cause versus correlation thing. They're not saying there's a cause, but just because there's a correlation between something doesn't mean that it's responsible for that behaviour.
Alicia, it's interesting. This study focused in on British teenagers between the ages of 14 and 15. And at that age, you think, well, they'll be able to know the difference between violence on a video screen and the consequences of violence in real life. Younger children playing video games. Now, we know that a lot of games come with age-appropriate certificates on, so you have to be a certain age to buy them. But let's face it, they get around that and they will play those more violent video games. Is there a need for a study to be done into that, perhaps? Is that a more interesting segment of children that needs to be looked at?
So I think that, young kids playing violent video games, it's also interesting to define kind of what we mean by violent video games, because there's, if you think of Tom and Jerry and the cartoons that I watched when I was a kid, that's incredibly violent. You've got people solving their problems.
They're quite obvious cartoons, aren't they? I mean, some of the games you're looking at are so realistic. Sure. It's like being in a film, and people are being shot, people are being, physically assaulted, blown up.
So, but if we're talking about the age range that we're talking, so say if you're referencing Call of Duty or first-person shooters like Battlefield, like proper war games, I would argue that, yes, absolutely, a 5-year-old should not be playing those games. Those are rated. We have a PEGI system here, an age rating that says that's an 18, and I do think that parents have a responsibility to look at the kind of games that their children are playing in the same way that they'd moderate what films and TV that they're watching. And that is very much on the parents. The industry has provided these regulations, and parents need to enforce them.
What this study didn't give a green light to as such, Amanda, is other issues surrounding gaming. So addiction, trolling, because obviously now a lot of children don't play games in isolation. They have a headset and they hook up to their school friends, or they hook up to people they don't even know to play these games from all over the world.
Yeah, and I think it's part of like we were saying, the sort of the wider parenting issues. It's not about the games themselves being innately bad and children playing those games. It's about what else is going on in their life, and if they are getting addicted and it's interfering with eating and sleeping and normal behaviour, then there's something that needs doing. If they are feeling bullied or upset when they play the games, absolutely you would intervene as a parent. So it's just recognising that gaming and digital life generally is part of normal life and requires often very normal parenting solutions, from stranger danger right through to don't say what you wouldn't, if you're not prepared to say it in person, don't say it. If you can't be kind, be quiet. Those kind of messages. It's all about just translating what we do normally as parents onto digital spaces.
Alicia, gaming does come in for a bit of a bashing, sorry to use an aggressive term, but there are positives to gaming as well. I mean, this is from Strathclyde Mark, who's tweeted me this morning. Good morning to you. He says, gaming can be a creative way to bond with your kids. My daughter loved Minecraft and would pester me to actually play it with her. We ended up building a full-size Titanic, a nuclear submarine, and a whole town complete with prison and McDonald's over a number of weeks. So, there are positive aspects to gaming.
Okay, first of all, that's amazing, building a full-size Titanic. But yes, absolutely. I got into gaming because I played it with my dad growing up, and some of my earliest memories are like running down excitedly to the couch, and we played Lara Croft Tomb Raider and like solving it together, and it was such a bonding experience. And there are incredible things that games do. One of the games that are topping all of the Game of the Year awards at the moment is called Celeste, and it's a game about a young girl climbing a mountain to overcome her anxiety. And it's genuinely one of the best games of the year. It looks at mental health. There's a point where it actually teaches you breathing exercises to get over anxiety. And it's a video game. It's a quirky platformer that's really hard. But that's also its heartbeat. And games, because in a video game, you solve a character's problems for them rather than passively watching on a TV screen a character solve their problems. That means that there's so many ways that we can build empathy and kind of these amazing experiences that you wouldn't be able to do if you were passively watching, a movie.
Amanda, what would be your advice to parents? Because, I've got friends now who have got children who are getting to an age where all the kids at school have got games consoles and they want one, and they're trying to resist because they know that opens the door to them always wanting to play it, and all the issues we've discussed today. What would be your advice to parents when it comes to gaming?
So I think, first of all, you have to have a conversation with your kids about what's reasonable, how much time, all that kind of stuff, because it is about what you're doing with your time. If you're spending lots of time being active, social, creative, imaginative, having that freedom, then the kids can do that. And if that's on a screen, playing a game with friends, being active, that's great. If it's solitary, sedentary and passive, then that needs regulating. So parents need to look at what's happening in the wider sort of children's lives. But yeah, have a discussion with the kids, agree some limits from the start and stick to them. Get the kids involved in making that decision so that they're more bought into it. And then just make sure that there is a mix of things that they're doing, that they're not just spending 4 hours solid glued to one particular game, and they're mixing it up, they're doing things with friends, and they're enjoying themselves.
Alicia, how much time were you spending gaming to become a gaming expert?
It depends on the game. But yeah, I mean, probably the same amount of time that I would put into a Netflix marathon. If I'm watching a Netflix series, that can be upwards of 10 hours if it's an hour per episode and 10 episodes. So yeah, like I've just finished a game that it took me 10 hours to complete, and I did it over the course of 2 weeks or so. Very much I agree with you. Balance is key, but there are some amazing experiences out there on video games.
Okay, well, talking about gaming and its effect, positive or negative on children, Alicia Judge and Dr. Amanda Gummer, thank you very much for joining us here on Sky News Sunrise this morning.